All right, ready to dive into some seriously deep stuff? Today we're tackling Marcus Aurelius and his meditations.
Yeah, this text, it's incredible, right? Still so relevant even after centuries.
Totally. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, ancient Rome, philosophy, what's that got to do with me? But trust me, Aurelius had some seriously timeless insights.
He really did. And it's wild how relevant Stoicism, Aurelius's whole philosophy is today. It speaks directly to all the craziness of modern life.
Exactly. And one thing that really struck me, Aurelius doesn't mess around. Like that part where he describes the ideal soul, good, simple, single, totally content, no craving for stuff. In our world of instant gratification and constantly wanting more, is that even possible?
Right. It's such a powerful image, and it cuts right to the heart of Stoic thinking. They were all about finding true happiness or virtue, but not from fleeting pleasures or material possessions.
So not about having the latest phone or whatever.
Exactly. It was about aligning your life with reason, focusing on what you could actually control, your own thoughts, your own actions.
Okay, so it's more about inner peace than external things.
You got it. It's about recognizing that true contentment comes from within, not from things outside of ourselves.
Makes sense. But way easier said than done, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant practice. And that's where this whole living in accordance with nature thing comes in, which Aurelius talks about a lot.
Like becoming a tree hugger.
Well, not exactly, although appreciating nature is great. But for the Stoics, nature had this much broader meaning. It was about this incredible order of the universe, this rational flow of things.
Okay, so everything has its place, everything happens for a reason, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And they believed that aligning ourselves with this order was key. A big part of that was this idea of accepting what we can and cannot control.
So instead of freaking out over traffic, something I can't control, I should focus on what? Listening to this deep dive.
I like it. It's about realizing our energy is best spent on things we can actually change.
Love that. But what about when things get tough? Really tough. How does living in accordance with nature work then?
Well, Aurelius talks about this too. He talks about our natural constitution, how we are all capable of handling what comes our way. We have an inner strength.
We're stronger than we think we are.
Totally. It's about tapping into that strength, that well of resilience we all have within us. The Stoics, they didn't shy away from hardship. They saw it as inevitable, a chance for growth.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about finding a way to grow from those tough experiences.
You got it. And that brings up another fascinating thing about Stoicism, this idea of finding opportunity, even when things are hard.
And Aurelius really takes it there when he talks about meeting those who've wronged us with love and understanding. Is that even possible? Especially when someone's really gotten under your skin. I mean, I know I'm not perfect.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a challenge, even for, an emperor philosopher.
Yeah.
But it gets to this incredible power we have, our own perspective. Remember, Stoicism isn't about denying your emotions. It's about choosing how you respond.
So instead of getting stuck in anger or resentment, try to look for understanding, growth.
Exactly. It takes effort, but the reward, according to the Stoics, is a sense of inner peace and freedom that doesn't depend on others. Think about a time you turned a negative experience into something positive, something you learned from.
I can think of a few. Definitely weren't fun at the time, though. But it makes me think about that part we pulled about fate. That everything that happens was destined and appointed. How does that jive with free will? Seems kind of contradictory.
Yeah, it's something that comes up a lot. It's important to remember that their concept of fate wasn't about just giving up. They weren't saying we're all puppets on strings.
So we still have a choice in how we live our lives.
Absolutely. They believe that while we can't always control what happens to us, we always control how we respond.
So even if something's seemingly meant to be, how we react is what really matters.
You got it. And that's where our free will comes in. We can choose to react with anger, resentment, or we can approach it with acceptance, courage, even humor.
Choosing how we show up, even when things are hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Stoics would say that in choosing our response, we actually shape our own destiny. Not by controlling events, but by mastering ourselves.
Oh, that's powerful. Okay, so we're diving into all these deep Stoic ideals, but how do they play out in our modern world? What does this actually look like in our everyday lives?
Well, thankfully, Aurelius gives us some pretty practical advice, like this technique he calls negative visualization.
Negative visualization? That sounds kind of intense. What is that?
It sounds scarier than it is. It's about taking a moment to imagine the loss of things we value.
Our loved ones, our stuff.
Yeah, even our own abilities. By imagining those things gone, we appreciate them more now, in the present.
I see. Like focusing on gratitude for what we have now instead of always wanting more.
Precisely. It helps cultivate that contentment we were talking about, that inner peace that isn't dependent on external things.
I love that. Okay, so we've got contentment, facing difficulty, gratitude. It's like Aurelius giving us a whole new framework for living. And speaking of frameworks, there's this other theme that runs throughout meditations, this idea of aligning ourselves with something bigger than ourselves, something he calls nature.
It is. It's central to his whole philosophy. And remember, for Aurelius and the Stoics, nature wasn't just like trees and mountains. It was this bigger thing, this all-encompassing order of the universe.
Okay, so how do we tap into that? How do we actually align ourselves with this cosmic order, as you put it?
Well, Aurelius believed that by understanding the laws of nature, both the natural world and this universal reason, we could live more harmonious lives, more fulfilling lives. That's where true happiness comes in, this inner peace.
I'm seeing a theme here. It's like everything connects back to aligning with something bigger than ourselves. Whether it's finding contentment or lacing challenges with courage.
It's like finding your place in the grand scheme of things, tuning yourself to the right frequency.
Love that. So let's get real for a second. Say I'm dealing with a frustrating coworker, or I'm facing a setback in my career. How does aligning with nature help me in those moments?
Think about a tree in a storm. It doesn't try to resist the wind directly. Instead, it adapts. It bends with the wind. It moves with nature.
So I shouldn't get caught up in frustration, but try to see the situation from a different perspective.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what's this situation teaching me? How can I use this as a chance to grow? That's aligning with nature, moving with the currents of life instead of against them.
It's like surrendering to what is, but not in a passive way. It's more like working with the current.
Exactly. And that surrender, that acceptance can be so freeing. It doesn't mean you don't take action or you don't try to improve things. It just means you approach those challenges with perspective, with acceptance.
I can definitely think of times when I've clung to how I thought things should be and all the suffering that came with that resistance.
It's human to want things our own way, right? But Aurelius reminds us that true peace comes from accepting what is, not fighting against it, surrendering to maybe a wisdom we don't always understand.
Makes sense. But that brings us back to fate versus free will. If we just surrender to this larger order, what happens to our choices, our actions?
That's such an important point. Stoicism doesn't dismiss free will. In fact, Aurelius stresses our choices, our actions, over and over again. He compares our lives to wrestling matches. We get thrown in the ring, we get knocked down, but we always get to choose how we get back up.
So it's not about controlling the match itself, but about how we choose to fight it.
Precisely. That choice, that response, that's where our power is.
I'm realizing this deep dive into meditations isn't just about, ancient philosophy. It's like rewiring how I think about everything.
Right. Aurelius was like a cognitive coach. He's training our minds to face life's challenges with resilience, wisdom, grace.
Okay, so we've got aligning with nature, finding opportunity in difficulty, even negative visualization. But there's this one passage I want to unpack. It feels like it ties everything together. He writes, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." That's huge.
It's a call to action, and it gets to the core of what Stoicism is all about. It's not just about thinking these big thoughts, it's about living them, embodying them.
So not enough to talk about being virtuous, we actually have to be virtuous. That's a pretty high bar, isn't it?
It's not always easy, and Aurelius would be the first to admit that. He saw meditations as his own personal journal, his way to hold himself accountable.
So it's a constant practice, this journey of trying to align our actions with our principles.
Exactly, and that's what's so relevant and inspiring about Aurelius. It's a reminder that living a good life, it's a process, it's self-reflection, it's learning, it's growth.
Something we can all connect with, I think. So as we dig into this idea of embodying virtue, what did Aurelius consider a virtuous life anyway? What did it look like for him? And how can we apply that to our lives today?
It really is the question, isn't it? What does that look like? A virtuous life, Aurelius style.
Right. How do we actually live that out?
Well, for Aurelius, and the Stoics in general, virtue came down to living in accordance with, reason and nature. Using our ability to think, to understand, to make choices that fit into that, like we talked about, that grand universal plan.
Yeah.
Even when those choices are hard.
So making rational choices, but what does that look like day to day?
Okay, let's say you're dealing with that coworker again, right? The one who just pushes your buttons.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. So the impulsive reaction might be to get angry, gossip, maybe even try to get back at them.
Yeah.
But the Stoic approach, it's about taking a step back, asking, what's the most rational response here? The most virtuous?
So instead of reacting from anger or frustration, I'm responding with calmness, thoughtfulness, even compassion.
Exactly. Choosing actions that line up with, well, with wisdom, with understanding, even when it's tough. And Aurelius would say that by doing this, we're not just making our own lives better, we're contributing to, the harmony of everything, playing our part.
Wow. So it's not just about being good for the sake of it, it's about realizing that what we do matters.
Exactly. It has this ripple effect. And that leads to another big part of Aurelius's vision of a virtuous life service to others. He believed we have a duty to use our abilities to make things better for everyone.
So looking beyond ourselves, being part of something bigger.
That's it. And that service, it can be so many things. Being kind to someone, volunteering your time, even just doing your job with excellence with the intention to help. The point is, we're here to make a positive impact.
I love that. But, and maybe this is just me, it feels like a lot to live up to. How can I possibly be that virtuous all the time?
That's where Aurelius's own humanity really comes through, I think. He wasn't writing this from on high, He saw himself in the same boat as us, struggling, messing up, trying to figure it all out.
He was an emperor. You'd think he'd have it all figured out.
Right. But even emperors have bad days. And Aurelius, he owns that. He reminds us that virtue, it's a journey, not a finish line.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about striving, about trying to be better.
Yes. And about being kind to ourselves when we fall short, which is, inevitable. And honestly, that's a message that we need just as much today as people did back then.
Totally. This whole deep dive has been incredible. Contentment, nature, becoming our best selves. Aurelius covered it all. But what really gets me, he wasn't some untouchable philosopher. He was right there with us, grappling with life, trying to practice what he preached.
Right. That's what makes the meditation so powerful. It's
Yeah.
real, it's vulnerable, and it's a reminder that we're all in this together, figuring how to live with more meaning, more fulfillment.
And who better to learn from than someone who was literally ruling an empire?
Right. If you could find time for reflection, for self-improvement amidst that chaos, well, it gives us all hope, doesn't it?
It really does. So for everyone listening, remember Aurelius's words. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Let that be your challenge, something to strive for. You don't have to be perfect, just be present. And thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive
I
into
stay
the mind
composed in the
of
face of adversity. I don't expose, I gotta still resolve. I never retreat, I embrace the struggle. I won't accept defeat. Step up. I keep my head high, never show despair. Step up, step up. I stay focused on my goals, on my grind, I'm aware. Step up, step up. I persevere through the pain and the strife. Step up, cause I'm a man of strength. I live a stoic life. I'm unbreakable, unshakable. Yeah, through the storms I'm unbreakable, unshakable. I keep my mind steady, my heart cold as steel. I'm unbreakable, unshakable. I know it's wrong. In the forge of life, I'm in iron mode, stoic mindset, and my veins is gold. I face the challenges, never lose sight. Stoic manhood in a stoic fight. Head high, like a pillar of strength in a path of honor. I go to great lengths, pain and strife. I turn it to fuel in the stoic arena where virtue's rule. Step up, step up, step up, step up, step up, and step up. In the whispers of the wind, stoic echoes ring. I'm the architect of my fate, I build my own wing. I stand tall, unyielding like a stone. Stoic principles in every verse I've known. Holes in my focus in the grind, I'm aware. In the face of challenge, I declare. Through pain and strife, I navigate. A stoic man in the world I cultivate. I wear my scars like badges of pride. Yeah, in the stoic rhythm, I let the beat guide. Never showing despair, never taking a dive. In the stoic anthem, I thrive. I'm unbreakable, unshakable. Through the storms, I'm unbreakable, unshakable. I keep my mind steady, my heart cold as steel. I'm unbreakable,
My big
unshakable.
takeaway of life is if you're constantly taking the easy way out, you're never gonna callous your mind. I was a chameleon living in life who could barely get by. So I know that they were taking the normal mindset of people. They weren't talking about the 1%ers, the people who want it like there's no tomorrow. Everything I didn't want to do is what got me to where I'm at today. It's about what you're saying to yourself, but it also comes with work. So whenever I was getting beat down, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever I was going through, just saying, you can't hurt me. I had this haunting voice in the back of my head. A lot of us have it. We just ignore it. And it was there for years. So I knew in the back of my mind that I could pull off this whatever I wanted. I knew I could. I knew that, but I was afraid of the work because I wasn't gifted with brains. I wasn't gifted with God-given talent as far as like athleticism. So I knew to get to where I had to go, to be on the same playing field as these men, to even try out for this program, I knew the work was going to be something that I didn't want to even attack. So I would just put it off. It haunted me. That's what I realized for myself was I wanted that comfort zone that everybody looks for, that pat on the back. They don't want to hear all the bad. They want to hear everything that they're doing right. And I realized that's what kept me in this world. That's what kept me in this world of not accomplishing anything. What I did was I became that big, bad master that you don't want to walk into at nighttime. I became the roughest critic in the world on myself. And that's what changed me. I literally saw myself.
Everyone at some time or another sits down to a banquet of consequences. A man who is as wise as a serpent can afford to be as harmless as a dove.
The mind is restless and difficult to restrain, but it can be controlled through practice and detachment. Bhagavad Gita.
You need something to fall back on when you get depressed. Find something you love, something you can lean on to, something that would keep you going. Life isn't something you possess. It's something you take part in.
You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Jim Rohn.
My reading, my learning, my workouts, my diet. You start neglecting all of that. You neglect one of them, you can neglect all of them a long time. It's going to haunt you. When you start seeing that, my God, I haven't eaten right in a long time, haven't been sleeping right in a long time. It can only be one of those things to take you off. I'm very aware of my eating, my sleeping, my disciplines of life. And when I started to get too far away from them, it's a hard stop. And the only thing that gets me mad nowadays is that so many people die with untapped potential because they think that someone else is better than them. And they were born not with the greatest tools. You need the ability to grind your ass into a fine powder. And when you're in that fine powder, find a way to build that back up repeatedly. And it's possible. When you come from a small town and you come from a place that a lot of people don't want to come out of it and get out of it, and all you want to do is become somebody, you've got to be able to get out and let your mind see open-mindedness. Because a small town, what it does to you is it closes your mind, completely closes your mind. Not everybody. This isn't everybody. A lot of people. You have to be able to go out there and create open-mindedness. You need space. You need space to see the world. Like a lot of racism, a lot of ignorance in the world, it comes from people not being out and seeing other things, seeing other people. That's why we judge so harshly, because our minds are so closed to the reality of life, period. Self-esteem was built at a young age. I had 0. So that's why that discipline for me was important. It takes nothing to be a loser. And that's why I hold most people to a higher standard, because I know how little it takes, little ability. Like, you need no talent, you need no greatness inside of you, and you can still be a bad mother.
What then disturbs me? The sea? No, but my opinion. Again, when an earthquake shall happen, I imagine that the city is going to fall on me. Is not one little stone enough to knock my brains out? What then are the things which are heavy on us and disturb us? What else than opinions? What else than opinions lies heavy upon him who goes away and leaves his companions and friends and places and habits of life? Now little children, for instance, when they cry on the nurse leaving them for a short time, forget their sorrow if they receive a small cake. Do you choose then that we should compare you to little children? No, by Zeus, for I do not wish to be pacified by a small cake, but by right opinions. And what are these? Such as a man ought to study all day and not to be affected by anything that is not his own, neither by companion nor place nor gymnasia, and not even by his own body, but to remember the law and to have it before his eyes. And what is the divine law? To keep a man's own, not to claim that which belongs to others, but to use what is given, and when it is not given, not to desire it. And when a thing is taken away, to give it up readily and immediately, and to be thankful for the time that a man has had the use of it, if you would not cry for your nurse and mamma. For what matter does it make by what thing a man is subdued, and on what he depends? In what respect are you better than he who cries for a girl, if you grieve for a little gymnasium, and little porticos, and young men, and such places of amusement? Another comes and laments that he shall no longer drink the water of Dirce. Is the Marcian water worse than that of Dirce? But I was used to the water of Dirce, and you in turn will be used to the other. Then if you become attached to this also, cry for this too, and try to make a verse like the verse of Euripides, the hot baths of Nero and the Martian water. See how tragedy is made when common things happen to silly men. When then shall I see Athens again and the Acropolis? Wretch, are you not content with what you see daily? Have you anything better or greater to see than the sun, the moon, the stars, the whole earth, the sea? But if indeed you comprehend him who administers the whole, and carry him about in yourself, do you still desire small stones and a beautiful rock? When, then, you are going to leave the sun itself and the moon, what will you do? Will you sit and weep like children? Well, what have you been doing in the school? What did you hear? What did you learn? Why did you write yourself a philosopher when you might have written the truth? As I made certain introductions and I read Chrysippus, but I did not even approach the door of a philosopher. For how should I possess anything of the kind which Socrates possessed, who died as he did, who lived as he did, or anything such as Diogenes possessed? Do you think that any one of such men wept or grieved because he was not going to see a certain man or a certain woman, nor to be in Athens or in Corinth, but if it should so happen in Susa or in Ecbatana? For if a man can quit the banquet when he chooses, and no longer amuse himself, does he still stay and complain? And does he not stay, as at any amusement, only so long as he is pleased? Such a man, I suppose, would endure perpetual exile or to be condemned to death. Will you not be weaned now like children and take more solid food and not cry after mammas and nurses, which are the lamentations of old women? But if I go away, I shall cause them sorrow. You cause them sorrow? By no means, but that will cause them sorrow which also causes you sorrow. Opinion. What have you to do then? Take away your own opinion, and if these women are wise, they will take away their own. If they do not, they will lament through their own fault.